We are good. All right, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Super excited today to have John Dailey on. John, thanks so much for coming on the show. Greg and I are both excited to talk to you today, man.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. So, everyone kind of heard a little bit of an intro, a little bit of your background, but if you could, just for our listeners, kind of, give us a little bit more about you. You got a great Marine Corps career, and the stuff we'll get into about starting, a whole new unit in the Marine Corps, and then the book you have coming out. But kind of give everyone like a little bit about you and where you're from originally, and then we can jump in from there, man.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was born and raised kind of on the West Virginia border and lived on both sides growing up. So it was a great place to grow up
Beautiful.
out in the mountains, the Blue Ridge Mountains. Um, Great, but I knew that I wanted to get out as soon as I could. So, in the Marine Corps, I decided to join the Marine Corps as a young man. So, as soon as I graduated high school, I was on a bus for Paris Island, and at 17, and that I knew that it was something I wanted to do. When I signed up, I thought that I asked them how long I could sign up for. I assumed I was signing up for 20 years. They're like, no. It goes in 4-year increments. But so I wound up doing 21 years and really had a lot of luck. I mean, there was obviously a lot of work involved too, but I kind of lucked out getting into a sniper platoon early, and that learned so much there, and then worked my way into Force Recon, which at that time was the pinnacle that you could achieve in the Marine Corps. So I spent most of my career there, loved that. Loved every day of it, and then had the opportunity to move and start a new unit, like you mentioned, the Special Operations Unit, working not for the Marine Corps but for U.S. SOCOM.
Yeah, so you're an actual Force Recon sniper, which so sometimes people like to like when they're making up stories about what they did in the military is like, oh yeah, I was a Force Recon sniper. So when you actually meet one, it's actually somewhat rare, I guess. But
Yeah,
you,
yeah, I guess it is. I mean, I know a lot of them, so it doesn't seem that way to
right,
me.
but
That's
it's
definitely one of the things that people, if you're gonna make something up, you may as well make up Force Recon Sniper.
yeah, I mean, you go for the gold, right? I mean, so if we're gonna do it, it's one of those things I used to hear, like people like, oh yeah, so and so, and they said they were a Force Recon sniper. I was like, okay, maybe, but it's funny, but yeah, man. So I wanted to kind of jump right in because you've got your book out, Tough Rugged Bastards, and we'll talk about it and what you're writing, which a lot of people don't know this. Marines actually can read and write, and I
Some of
like to
us.
say like one of the biggest lies the Marine Corps ever told is they just tell everyone that they actually created the whole lie about Marines being dumb and crayon eaters, so that like they get left alone because no one thinks we're doing anything. They're like, oh, they're just the bastard child of the DoD, and then we actually get to go do cool stuff. But so I want to jump into that. So you started up, you helped start with a bunch of other folks. Some of them I know, this Marine Special Operations Command. So that was new, obviously the Marine Corps. So Marine, one, if you're a Marine, no one's special. You're just a Marine. But then also the Marines think like, hey, we're all they'll tell other branches, hey, we're all special. We don't need this area in SOCOM like Marines already are. But could you give everyone just a little bit of background about like how that works and the significance of it, and then we can kind of jump into all the different things that were going on at the time.
Absolutely. So the quick kind of history lesson is that the Marine Corps has always, throughout our history, has done kind of the harder things, done special operations. Really, the first raising the American flag on foreign soil was, following a 500-mile march across the Libyan desert by, a handful of Marines that raised a guerrilla army, and we're trying to reinstall the rightful king of Tripoli. Um, so the Marine Corps, and then from there we kind of moved into the banana wars in South America, and we're really kind of in the political and military legends, like Chesty Puller was the military governor of Nicaragua for quite some time. So we had kind of gained a reputation as jungle fighters, but also as a force that could kind of operate in the political realm as well. But the Marine Corps, like you mentioned, has really been reluctant to ever embrace the idea that there's a special unit within it. So it wasn't until World War II kicked off that there was the Marine Raiders were formed kind of at the the president said do it. All right, and there's a real interesting history when you get into it. The president's son was involved, and the Marine that had served as the president's bodyguard, a guy named Evans Carlson, was tapped to be one of the leaders of one of the Raider battalions. So really interesting history. But 2 years and the Marine Raiders were disbanded, and it other than Force Recon, and the Marine Corps several times following Vietnam disbanded First Force Reconnaissance Company and didn't reactivate them until the early late 80s, I guess. But in 1987, when SOCOM was formed, it was kind of following the failed rescue attempt to rescue Americans from the embassy in Iran that had been taken hostage. The decision was that, hey, we need one component that oversees all special operations. So when they were formed, the U.S. SOCOM, the SEALs went over, the Green Berets went over, the Rangers, the Air Force Special Operations, and the Marine Corps was invited, but said no, we're good. We don't want to do that, and that's kind of the way it's been. So we were kind of within the special operations world, the bastard children. But following 9/11, the Secretary of Defense at the time, Donald Rumsfeld, said, hey, we're going to need more special operations for this coming fight. And so he told the Marine Corps, you guys, this time you are going to participate. So the Marine Corps fought back, and eventually the decision was, and SOCOM fought back, to be honest. They weren't really interested in having Marines join. But the decision was that we'll start a small unit that will be a test bed for 2 years, and we'll see how it goes. And I had, at this point, I had been the platoon sergeant for a Force Recon platoon, and I was in, sitting in a pub in Australia when 9/11 happened. So it was nighttime there, not morning. But then we found ourselves in Afghanistan, and it was by November of 2001, and my platoon was responsible for the first the Marine Corps combat on road interdictions between Kandahar and a town called Lashkar, but in December. So I came back on the back end of that, and was probably largely responsible for the fact that I was tapped that, hey, do you want to be a part of this unit? And of course I did.
Yeah, that's it's cool how all that got started. And then, again, like you said, there's always these sort of background political arguments and command arguments and people saying, well, we don't want to do that, or yes, we want to do that. And so like it's interesting the backstory on some of this stuff, because working through that is really, really difficult, right? So, because I remember even this kind of get started, I knew some folks over there, and it was like, okay, well, there's these arguments of like, well, are you SOCOM or are you part of the Marine Corps? Do you fall under this? It's like, well, we're under SOCOM. It's like, okay, but that gear you're wearing belongs to the Marine Corps, so give it back. I mean, like, there's actual like logistical things that that come up. And so I'm curious, just because of the way the culture is with the Marine Corps, and the DoD, and SOCOM is spelled, ARMY. If anyone doesn't know that, it's Army. But with that, what were some of those like kind of challenges looking back that you sort of didn't expect to happen? I mean, of course, one, you have the people that are like, hell yeah, let's do this, and everyone wants to be part of this because it's kind of historical, right? But then you also have a lot of pushback, and like I'm curious, like what that was like for you guys getting going. Like, what was that pushback you got internally or externally? I mean, you're saying like even SOCOM didn't want you there. It's like, hey, like we're fighting for a job here. We should be belonging. Like, what are some of those things that you came across during that time?
Yeah, it was interesting. There was a lot of it that we kind of arrived so our unit, Detachment 1, was composed of roughly a Force Recon size platoon, so about 30 men. About another 30 men were our intelligence unit, which was massive. I mean, that was they thought that our commander was insane for asking for that, but it proved to be absolutely valuable. And then the remainder were, there were communicators, there were logisticians, administrative people, our tactical air controllers, kind of all of the other things that you need to make an organization run. So for most of us in what was the operational platoon, we just kind of put our heads down and did what we do. So we weren't privy to a lot of the decisions that were being made and a lot of the things. It was the direction was that the Marine Corps was going to pay for this, and the Marine Corps is notoriously cheap. So they're like, hey, we'll give you this much money. And fortunately, we were able to, we actually hired a civilian who worked as a equipment specialist for the DoD. So we brought him on, and he was able to kind of move money around and get us money for the equipment and everything. So we were very well outfitted, even though it was largely the Marine Corps dime. But there was, like, we had no idea when we stood up where we were going to deploy to, who we would deploy under. We had assumed that we were going to go to Afghanistan. That was just, we're a Force Recon platoon, so our primary mission is reconnaissance. It seemed that reconnaissance, Afghanistan would be the place for that. So we spent, we had a year basically to prepare. We spent the first 6 months really very heavily focused on reconnaissance and on the idea that we would be in Afghanistan. So the vehicles that we procured, a lot of the things were kind of based on that. And then about halfway through, they're like, oh, no, by the way, you're going to go to Iraq. You're going to essentially perform as another SEAL platoon underneath the SEAL architecture. Once we knew that, and then our mission was primarily going to be direct action, just finding bad guys. And that's what we were also good at that. So we spent the last 6 months really kind of focused on that skill set, building that up, and we that's primarily what we did. So overall, there were at the headquarters level, there were absolutely a lot of there's a lot of headbutting and a lot of rice bowl battles. For us, I think the biggest recognition was you start up a new unit, you have nothing. I mean, we had buildings being built, but they were temporary kind of structures. But even those took 3 or 4 months to have built. We had no equipment, so the only thing that every recon Marine owns is his own rucksack. So the one thing that we knew we could do was go rucking, and so the platoon sergeant that we had was adamant that hey, we've got a lot of people who were kind of considered heavy hitters in the Force Recon community. There's a potential, when you do that, to have a lot of, friction. It's like, we're all going to do is we're all going to put, 55 pounds on our back, and we're going to go 20 miles every Thursday morning. And when we finish, we're going to go straight to work. There's no, you can eat lunch, but, no time off, no, nobody's going to clap you on the back for finishing a 20-mile run. So that really, I think, helped set the one. It gave us the opportunity, a lot of hours walking, to get to know some of the people that we, had come from different units and things, but also just drilled into our head that no matter how special you are, you got to get to work, and usually getting to work is going to be on the black Cadillacs on your feet.
Yeah. I mean that's a whole host of issues I could see coming up, especially with that team dynamic. It's like, okay, you're being selected for this special thing. The one, you got to prove yourself again. Even, I mean, this is the thing too. It's like you're picking from a group of people that have already proven themselves, not just like in training and through assessment and selection, but through deployments and done this. It's kind of like that. All right, starting over again almost. And like you said, you got nothing. We got to figure it out as we go along. So what do you think helped best, or like how did you guys just form as a team, right? What I mean, you're talking like, all right, yeah, we go out hiking every Thursday, we're gonna go to a rock and we're gonna talk and whatever, but like what was it that really kind of like that worked for you guys to get everyone together?
Absolutely. So we initially organized into 4 teams when we thought that we were going to be doing reconnaissance. When we realized later before deployment, we split into 6. But I was able to. I was kind of brought in by our boss, Colonel Coates, and he said, "Hey, you pick your guys. And that's where the title of the book came from. He was like, "Hey, you my requirements. I want tough, rugged bastards. And I was sitting in his office. I'm like, man, one of these days, if I ever write a book, it's going to be called that. I kind of had always had this thing in the back of my head. I always loved to read, so I always thought that I would. But I think that was part of it. I knew the people that I picked, and it was a really good lesson in leadership. That before that, like I said, I had been a platoon sergeant at Force Recon. Years before, I'd been a chief scout, like almost a platoon sergeant in the infantry in a sniper platoon. And you always have the people that you got to keep an eye on, the people that you got to sit down and coach and bring out the best in, and the people that you have to make sure are not screwing up. But in this sort of unit, it was a different type of leadership is required, and you really have to put people, give people things to be in charge of themselves, because they're all leaders and had been leaders. So you really, even though one of the things that really I think kept us humble was just the requirement that we were responsible for when we did get our facilities built. Every Friday we were out like pressure washing the buildings, and E8s, like our 1E9, we're sorting brass. It was cleaning the heads. It was because we were a unit with very, very senior people. We didn't have a lot of junior guys that you could say, hey, Lance Corporal, go clean. We didn't have any Lance Corporals, so it was all and those things keep you honest, keep you humble. When you realize that, I'm a team leader in the 1st Marine Corps Special Operations Unit, but I'm in here plunging the shitter on Friday. It's hard to get too big of a head.
Yeah, no, and those are I mean, it's like the little things like that really go a long way, and when you're talking about, taking ownership of something, and it's not just about, it's still all someone's got to clean the toilet, someone's got to take the trash out, someone's got to do this. And when you have a bunch of senior folks, it's like, oh yeah, now we have to start doing this again.
And I think we also realized that, how lucky we were to be a part of this. And how immense like the weight on our shoulders was, because if we did poorly, then the answer was easy. SOCOM didn't want this, the Marine Corps didn't want this. So we knew that, if this thing was going to happen and grow, then we needed to knock it out of the park. So it was it's quelled a lot of even among the team leaders. I would say myself and the other 3 team leaders initially, there was headbutting. There was but we were like, hey, we need to we'll butt heads, we'll go out and throw blows in the corner, but when that's done, we've got to get back to this mission that we have, and that's to be successful at whatever it is that told to do.
So you guys are like, you're doing this work up, you're thinking, especially strong reconnaissance, obviously RNS background from everyone on the team, and you think you're going to Afghanistan, then you got to pivot, like, okay, like we're going to Iraq now, different ball game, different mission. But then, like you said, what was that like with did you guys feel sort of that pressure of, you're going on the first deployment for a brand new unit, even though everyone's highly skilled, highly trained, highly experienced, already had combat deployments, like, what was that like going into that? Because like you said, like you have to prove it. Otherwise it's not just, hey, not a great deployment. It's like, no, this isn't going forward. This unit's done.
Yeah, I absolutely think that collectively we realized that we were, really, really good. I think, and I thought it was only me throughout that I had this. I'm like, man, when's somebody gonna realize that they made a mistake? I should not be here. I should not be, even though, and I've kind of always, and what I realized, when I wrote about it in the book is that, that's probably the one aspect that I've had more people contact me about and say, man, I thought I was the only guy, because we don't talk about that, like imposter syndrome or whatever. So I had, all of us, I think, were, and you're probably a psychotic if you don't have that to some level. So there's, but we kind of pushed that down, and it was, when we deployed, when we landed in Iraq, we realized that traditionally with a normal unit rotation, you're replacing another unit, and that unit gives you, hey, here's everything that we were working on, all the targets, packages, and things. We didn't have that. the SEALs had put us in an area of Baghdad where they had not had another SEAL team, so we didn't have that luxury to kind of draw on. And so we were like, man, we've got to make something happen. It's hard. How do you figure out who the
Yeah.
bad guys are when you don't know anything about the area? And that's where our intelligence section like totally paid off. So when we got there, we had trained with the understanding that we were going to stay as an entire detachment, roughly 100 folks. Um, and so attached to my team, I had a human intelligence specialist. I had a geo spatial intelligence guy. I had a signals intelligence guy. And so I had this insanely capable, intelligence apparatus with my team. When we got there, the SEAL commander who was in charge was like, "Hey, I own you guys, and you've got way too much, of this intelligence. You've got much more than I do. So I'm going to, take some of your people and like farm them out to support my SEAL teams." Which, of course, initially we were, really pissed about. But the thing that we didn't count on is that now we had like our eyes and ears all over Iraq, with special missions units, with other SEAL teams, all over the place, with just attached throughout. So we had this massive network that was very quickly able to communicate, among each other
Yeah.
and track things that other individual units weren't tracking because they were, they weren't looking at the big picture. They were looking kind of myopically at their own little patch of ground.
Yeah. That that's a number. I just think of like all the different things that come up when you're doing this. So a new unit, you're going there now. You're working for a SEAL commander, which I get it. Like that's how SOCOM can work, or depending on what command you're at, that's not unusual. But like, what was there, like you're walking in, I always say like Marines and SEALs actually there's so much alike, so they either love each other or hate each other. It's kind of like my brother is a SEAL, I'm Marine, it's like, that this there's just a lot of like kind of crossover in some of the missions, but and the attitude, and just how that is. But I'm curious, like was that tough with them, like saying like, hey, we can do this work, or did they just give you like the, oh, we don't know what's going on over here, go take that, go figure something out? Was it just like, we don't know what to do with you, or how did that work? Because again, it's like they're like, all right, well, you guys are Marines, so you know how to fight, and win battles, but like, how does that fit into the overall structure of what they were doing?
Yeah, it was definitely, there were growing pains on both sides. So I think that naval special warfare as an entity wasn't terribly happy about it. Um, but I think there were some of them also that realized that, hey, if we have this, naval, now, if we add Marines into this, now the naval service has a bigger slice of the pie, right, within SOCOM, because the Army makes up like 70% of SOCOM. I may be off on that number, but it's huge. I mean, MARSOC makes up now about 3%. And naval special warfare is like 6. So there's, together, we grew a little bit, but we were incredibly fortunate that the SEAL commander that we worked for was very upfront. He was like, "Hey, I'm going to treat you exactly like one of my teams. I'm going to give you everything that I can, give you to make you successful, all the support, all the assistance." And we're friends to this day. I mean, he wound up was a great supporter of us. So it was helpful, but it was still, like I said initially, just trying to find the low hanging fruit that you can go find, and then build from there. So that all came down to our, like I said, the intel people just making things happen. Reading through intel reports and doing their little diagrams, and ultimately, were able to point us within our couple weeks of getting there, at a target, and that target, led to another target and another, and then you kind of make your own luck after that.
Yeah, that's incredible. What was your guys' first mission then as the team? I mean, what was the first MARSOC mission?
So it was atypical, to say the least, and it was during our workup, I was the junior team leader, right? I mean, I was a gunnery sergeant, but I was still, quite a few years younger than, and a couple of years less time in the Marine Corps than the other guys. So I had always had the mentality, and this one thing I told my team is that, hey, we'll do windows, right? Well, if there's a mission to do, we'll do it. And I don't care what it is. Everyone loves to do the direct action mission. You fly in, you blow off the door, you shoot things, and you go home. But I've always felt that reconnaissance is we were called Force Reconnaissance, right? That was our bread and butter. And in the time right before I came to, before Detachment 1 started, I had been the director of our urban sniper course and our urban reconnaissance course. So I had, all of that kind of fresh in my head. So anytime there was an unusual mission during training, my team was given it. If it was, hey, it's sub-zero and you guys are going to be out in Mercury, Nevada for 4 days, finding routes and observing a target. So when the first mission came up, it was our intel folks that had found a report saying that, and he'd seen a number of reports over time that Iraqi interpreters who were working for the U.S. were being killed. And he went back and realized what nobody else had put together, that there had been like 17 of these interpreters kind of around Iraq in a relatively short period of time had been killed. So he started, just going through and doing link analysis and realized that, hey, it all comes down to one person. And that one person was a female interpreter. So we found out where she was, and the intel guys like, hey, I've got an idea. If we can go grab this woman, then we can, start, figure out what's going on. So, all the team leaders, of course, go in and they're like, hey, I want the mission. And I'm like, hey, this is odd, right? This is the sort of mission that, how many reconnaissance missions or how many of these, sorts of things have anybody else done lately? In workups, I did them all. So it's, it's like the Chicken Little thing of like making the bread. I'm like, nobody helped me make the, nobody else wanted to go on reconnaissance missions. Nobody else wanted to do this. This one's mine. So it wound up being me, a SEAL that I had to take with one of our human intelligence folks. And because it was a woman, we had borrowed a female operator from the GROM, the Polish Special Forces. And so it's the four of us, civilian clothes, driving out through Baghdad in the middle of the day. And we got to the place where she was supposed to be, and they're like, oh, no, she doesn't work here anymore. She's, 20 miles further away. And so I'm on satellite phone. I'm like, let us go. And they're like, all right. So, then it's, 20 miles further this way, and then it's over here. And so all day we're kind of bounced around until we find the place. They're like, hey, she quit last week. And so we were able to convince them to bring her in. And, when she came in, the GROM operator, took her into custody, essentially, brought her back. And we also brought the gentleman that was driving her, brought her back. And we pretty quickly realized that she was responsible, but she was clueless. Right? She had been a victim of what normally you call a honeypot operation, right? Or it's the shoes on the other foot, right? It's a guy with a hot chick that entices you to provide information. In this case, it was a guy who had befriended her and said, hey, I need some interpreters. Maybe you could get me your company phone book or a recall roster or whatever, and was using that to go and take these targets out. Jeez. So when she found this out, she was distraught, obviously, but she was also livid, right? It's like hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. So she was pissed. Yeah. So she gave him up, and said, hey, here's where he works. Here's his house. Here's his friends. And so our second mission was, and that mission, because it had so many kind of moving parts, that I think made people, even though it was going out to grab an old lady, right? People recognized that, hey, there was a lot going on here. So these MARSOC or these Detachment 1 people can be trusted to do kind of traditional soft type missions. So the couple of nights later, we roll out to this guy's house and grab him in his place of work. We grab him at his house, hit his place of work at the same time, and there's a lot of like propaganda and bomb making materials and things like that. So grabbed him, shook him a little bit, and then we started to build a link analysis of who's next.
Yeah. Yeah, man, that's wild. But you want to talk about when people say, find work, you literally had to make your own, make your own work. But like, that's sometimes when you get the best stuff where it's like, all right, no one's looked at this. Let's go over here and then start putting things together. And then next thing you know, it leads to another thing. Next thing you know, it leads to another thing. So, Greg, I don't want to. This is the longest you've gone, I think,
Yeah,
without
I'm
talking on the
fascinated by the
podcast. So
discussion. I'm
I wanted
loving it. So, no. So I wrote down a couple of notes and apologize for going sideways and backwards. But Brian's a huge fanboy. You can't see that, John, but I know when he gets excited and he likes talking about the Marines, So the first thing I wrote it down in red because we got 3 vets on here with various levels and degrees of background and experience and all that. And you said something that is the stuff of legend. You said they looked at you and said, pick your own team. Okay, how many times did that happen in your career? That happens nowhere ever, right? So how did you feel, John, when that was given to you?
That was it was a huge honor, right? One that our boss trusted me to pick the right guys, and I had the. I don't know if it was always a pleasure, but before I was finally given a platoon, I had the same boss. He had been Colonel Coates had been my boss at First Force Recon. He was the commanding officer there. Then my boss at Special Operations Training Group, and then my boss again. So he had when he arrived, I was coming off a platoon as a team leader, and normally that's the progression is from team leader you'll go to platoon sergeant at some point, but he had an idea to create a training cell. So it's pretty common idea, but it really didn't exist. So there was a handful of us that were kind of handpicked to help each platoon as they went through their training, organize the training, evaluate, make sure that they were being held to standards of performance. So in that 2 years that I was doing that, I got the opportunity to watch, every platoon go through training. So I really I was like, I know this guy, this guy, Mike Muldown. I know I want him. I really want this guy. And then everybody, we didn't have free reign to anybody that we wanted. There were people that were already, in the workup for a platoon, for a deployment. So there were certain people that we couldn't get, but I had worked at the Special Operation Training Group with a couple of the people that I picked. So it was rewarding, to be able to do that. And when you do that, you know who you're picking, their their strengths, their weaknesses, you got to have, you don't want a team where everybody's exactly the same, having the rowdy guy that, you're going to have to watch sometimes, but he, when you send him out for something, he's going to overperform. And then, the quiet guy that's just always thinking, so it's being able to, and I've since, in my current job, we talk a lot about that team structure, team dynamics, and how you, if you have the opportunity to create a team or to assign particular people to particular missions, taking into account their background, their personality, things like that. So I didn't realize I was doing it at the time probably, but I was able to, kind of pick and choose to make sure that one of the things I think a great trait or a trait of great leaders, and I don't necessarily consider myself a great one, but, surrounding yourself with great people and letting them work. And that was, having the opportunity to do that is from the ground up is huge.
No, that's fascinating. And I was going down through similarities, and we're dissimilar. Our backgrounds, everything is nothing could be the same. But I'm getting chills because I'm reading your stuff and I'm looking at it and I go, okay, so one MEF SOTG has me working in Iraq and I'm bouncing around all the different locations. And I'm talking to Jim Conway, and I said, hey, do I need to prepare anything for Afghanistan? He goes, Marines are never going to be in Afghanistan, so you have no reason whatsoever to prepare for that. And then the next thing I know, I'm getting sent to Afghanistan, and I land in Lashkar Gah. They sent me to Kandahar, then flight out to Lashkar, and they go, hey, you're going to Lower Helmand. And I got all my gear, and I'm scared to death with Connex full of gear. And they said, well, you won't need any of that because you're following the Marines. And I go, what do you mean by that? And they said, well, with the Army, you were teaching in FOBs and combat outposts, but with the Marines, they're following the Taliban. So you got to have like a propeller in your ass. And it was so funny to see the different way that the war was being fought, even regionally, even in different cities, and even in different locations. So with for example, with when I would fall in under a special operations group unit, or you'd go for Task Force Paladin, let's say, it'd be completely different than the next one. So how long did it take you to get to the point where you were up to speed with that, where you were going, okay, now we're autonomous. Now and you never really were autonomous, but I mean, now we can run our own game and not be beholden to some other unit?
I think pretty early on, because there wasn't a lot of support to provide us. We did some like joint operations where we would work with the GROM if we needed, external security because the target was too large or we had to hit multiple targets at a time. But we didn't. We were formed to be a MAGTAF, right? A Marine Air Ground Task Force. Well, not air, a Marine Ground Task Force, essentially. With and Colonel Coates built this around the warfighting functions of, hey, we've got to be able to do all these things on our own. So we absolutely had to have support. A lot of it was, like I said, we had prepared for Afghanistan, so we brought IFAVs, the Mercedes fast attack vehicles, which are pretty good for driving around the desert. They're shitty for not unarmored. They're basically like a Jeep, without a top.
Yeah.
For driving down the streets in Baghdad. So we were able to put our hands on a handful of almost unserviceable Humvees before we left. Brought those over, and the Army engineers were kind enough to weld steel onto the outsides and things of that nature for us. And then later SOCOM was able to provide us with vehicles. But as far as the planning and execution of the bulk of our operations, we were pretty much self-sufficient.
That's great. That's fantastic. Yeah. And Brian, I got to tell you, when we did the research for this, John, Brian and I were excited about it. And that some things have happened in the last couple of weeks that kept side railing it. So this morning, the anticipation was killing me to be on here. It's just so much fun to talk to somebody that's had such a wide variety of experiences, and it's not unlike a National Football League coach. You were given such rare opportunities, and you knew that. You knew that at the time, and you knew that going in, and you certainly didn't usurp that. You certainly tried to go in and do the best, and that's different because what I found with the Marines and embedded and dealing with the Marines all the time is exactly what Brian was saying about. Listen, every Marine's a rifleman, and every Marine does this, and you're not special. And when you talk to the Joint Special Operations Command, it's entirely different. They all have different units and different insignia and their rich history of whatever else. So did you face any backlash from fellow Marines for being allowed to have this amazing opportunity?
Yes. I mean, not from the tactical level, like peer level. I mean, they were all jealous, obviously,
right.
But very jealous. But there was a lot of resistance from the Marine Corps. We dealt with a lot from staff officers that were kind of on the periphery of things. When we would, and we tried to be, and that was one of the things that was kind of beat into us by our boss, Colonel Coates, but also our platoon sergeant. That we're representing the Marine Corps, but we also we can't forget that we are Marines. And that's the same story, same thing I tell, young Marines coming into MARSOC now is, the things that will make you successful are the same things that make you successful as a Marine. And I feel that SOCOM recognizes that about MARSOC now is that you're starting with Marines, and so when you do that, you're starting with a pretty solid product.
Yeah.
But yeah, we would. Still there's the urge to rebel, like being a teenager, I guess. When you're given an inch, you take a mile. So,
right.
We would often roll into a conventional organization, chow hall, and in Fallujah, going to the Marine chow hall there with we weren't allowed to have beards, and that was much to our dismay. But because of that, we all had like out of regs mustaches. Like porn star mustaches.
Yeah.
And we had, different uniforms, and we had, different things on our weapons. And, we would come into a chow, and inevitably somebody would like, hey, you guys need a haircut. You guys need to do this. You guys need to do that. And so we took a little bit of pleasure in like, well, why don't you go fuck off?
Yeah.
But
so
for
good.
the most part, I mean, it's, we, I think, largely recognize the fact that, we're representing the Marine Corps. So we've got to do that in a way that, both tactically in the tactical actions that we take, but also the way we carry ourselves, the way that we behave. We can't play the fool and if we do, we're going to make the Marine Corps look bad. And that's not what any of us wanted.
Right. And you got to have that right, like you said, the right kind of leadership, because Greg and I, when we're doing our work, we work with all kinds of different organizations,
Yep.
police, private sector, military, like, but we see a lot of the same issues. And when everyone just says, well, it's leadership, or it's culture, it's this, it's like, it really is like, you can have, I always tell people, like, you can have the greatest team in the world, and if there's a bad leader, like, they're just not going to do, like, they're going to perform, but it's not going to be great. Or you could take like a completely average team, but give them a really good leadership, and they're going to do well, like, because it's just, that comes down to everything. So what, like, what are, everyone wants, like, hey, what's the secret to this? And there isn't one, obviously, or how do you do that? But like, what are some of those things? Because you're talking about yourself and you have your own experience, but you've got this group of individuals that are high performers. They want to go get some. They're Marines, so like you said, there's some that you're like, hey, you're never to be seen by the colonel. You go hide. Like, stay away. Like, but when we need you, we know you're there. It's the in case of war, break glass. Like, everything else, like, your life is a mess, but you're really good at what we need you to be good at. So you have those characters, and you have some people, like you said, like, they're natural leaders, or are good speakers. They can brief. But how do you, like, what are some of those secrets or things that you've learned that are like, what the best thing to do with something like this is, this is how I approach it? Are there those kind of takeaways that you've learned in your career?
Yeah, I'd say one, and I think the SEALs may have come up with this, but a little XY chart that has performance on one side and trust on the other. And if you, a lot of times in the civilian world, absolutely, in sports, absolutely, like, we prioritize the performance. We want somebody that's a really good performer, even if they're low on the trust axis. You can't have somebody that's super trustworthy but sucks at their job.
Yeah.
So you really have to look for people, and none of us are optimum performers all the time, right? But what we need is people that are both trustworthy and good at their job, and we need to continue to work on finding ways to bring them up in both axes. I think that's a huge one. Like I said, with there's in the Marine Corps leadership, there's two responsibilities, I guess. There's mission accomplishment and troop welfare.
Yep.
And I think that carries over to most anywhere else. A lot of the stuff I see is people that talk about leadership, talk about welfare. You gotta, nobody cares how much you know until you know how much they care, which is ridiculous, right? I mean, if that was the case, then like your mom would be the best platoon sergeant, right? I mean, we need people. We need to win wars, right? We need to accomplish missions. So we got to have people that know what they're doing. But and that's easier because that's the way that we promote people. That's the way that we grow, right? We get good at our job, and then we get promoted to another level of authority. And we can grow people, though, on the other axis of making them understand that taking care of your people, looking out for their welfare. And the biggest thing that I learned, like I said, in this particular instance, was that you have to recognize the capabilities. And that's one of the Marine Corps leadership principles: employ your people in accordance with their capability. Right. And knowing that, hey, this guy's really, really good at this. Let me, focus him in this direction, but let me also, make him do some of the things that he's not good at, so that, he'll, over time, he'll get better. So, I learned a lot about more servant leadership is kind of the big buzzword, but the more hands-off leadership during that, because you can't be, and I had been I'd been kind of forced to be, and as a younger leader, I think you're forced to be, maybe not a micromanager, but you've got to inspect what you expect, right? And when you try to do that with somebody that, and you still have to do it, you just have to do it differently. You just have to, say, hey, come back and brief me on what you've done, because people want to be inspected, right? They want to know that you're not just giving them busy work, that what they're doing is important. So that's what I learned, probably more about kind of managing personalities, high performing personalities during that than anything else, because they were all high performing personalities. Any one of them could have stepped in and done my job, which probably means I picked well. And I said there's a saying, or the saying that you should surround yourself with people that definitely make up for your weaknesses, right? So I felt we had all our bases covered with Detachment 1.
Yeah, I think you also can't surround yourself with people that are yes men or yes people all the time either. You've got to have somebody that's got the balls to walk up to you and say you're out of line, or hey, there's another way of doing this. And that in high performing teams can be suicidal or it can be confrontational, but it has to be done. And I think that's an earmark of a good leader. I wrote down one of your quotes, hoping that one day when we meet in person, that we'll be able to get a signed book. To me, stuff like that is huge. It's more important than coins used to be important, but now everybody's got one. I saw a kid selling the cookies for this football team. I bought some and he gave me a coin. But back when it meant something, this is the kind of quote that meant something to me. And you said, "Don't follow me. It's your life, your walking point." And statements like that are so deep, because you're at the top of your game. You're an overperforming person in a field of overperformers. Yet you took it seriously enough to not just do the Army, follow me, I'm the infantry, but to say, hey, look, you've got a stake in this. Step up to the challenge. The second part of that later on was, my passion is helping people get better at getting better. Holy shit. Those are so important and influential, because there's a big group of people out there. I'll poke somebody in the eye, I'm sure, that just because you served in the military, the next thing you know, they've got a website and they're teaching you how to, hey, humility and resilience go hang. Yeah, exactly. But you know what I'm talking about. And you look at them and you go, okay, whoa, wait, your life should be somewhat in order before you come to me and tell me how to fix mine. So with all of the things that you bring to bear, what do you think is the most, there was a question there, what do you think is the most important experience that you had from the military that you now teach CEOs and executives and people outside the military that they just couldn't see before they talk to you?
Absolutely. I think there's probably a handful of them, but I think the most important thing is, so quick story, but my wife was a school teacher when I met her, a school teacher for like 30 years. We were married, and we're still married, but a couple of years ago, she decided to become a travel agent. and she got fed up, not with the kids. She loved the kids, but
The parents. It's always the parents.
Parents, the administration, and everything. And I didn't think there were travel agents anymore. I figured people just, but there are.
Yeah.
She loved it. She's like a master logistician. But when I started like asking her about kind of what she does, I realized that really the key to leadership kind of boils down to the same things that is the key to being a good travel agent. And first, you got to know where the hell you're going. You can't tell somebody that, hey, come join me on this trip. We're gonna go cool places. Right? They want to know where you're going. And as a leader, you are, kind of definitionally, right? You're leading people from one place to another. So I think one of the biggest mistakes that leaders make is that they really have no idea where they're going. And a lot of people make the same mistake in their lives, right? They really don't know where they're going. In the Marine Corps, the military writ large, or even in organizations, you might have a mission statement or things like that. But within that mission statement, that broad mission statement, you've got to figure out as a leader, where am I taking my people to? And maybe that's to being more productive. Maybe that's to, making more money or whatever that is. But that's the first thing, I think. The second is that you have to create a really badass travel brochure. All right. Once you know where you're going, you have to entice other people to come with you. And again, in the military, you can kind of get away with, hey, I'm in charge, do what I say. But you can only get away with that for so long.
Yeah.
And absolutely in business and some of the other people I work with, you've got to, that doesn't work very well. And even less so today, I think. People, the idea that people take a job and stay at it until they die, doesn't exist. All right. So if you want just good talent to stick around, demonstrating how they're going to be better when they get to that destination than they are now. And then third is you have to be very upfront about the cost. All right. That, hey, you don't get to come along on this ride for free. It's going to take, blood, sweat, and tears. It's going to take this level of effort. This is the standard that we expect of you as a member of this, special operations team or the sales team or, a football team. It doesn't really matter. So I think that, I learned more from her. That's really consolidated my view of what leadership is kind of through her job as a travel agent.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
And the best bits of logic that I've learned in my short life are always from somebody else, and it was unexpected, and they're short bursts of information that you can use immediately, rather than the soliloquy where you have to read a lot and the person drones on and you're sitting there digging through your notes trying to figure it out. As soon as you hear it, it's magic. So thank her for us, because that's a great answer, by the way. And the cost, I think that's the other thing, the cost. Like, there's so few people that join the military and so few people that become veterans and combat veterans because I think the cost scares them away. They get sticker shock right up front. And they sometimes don't understand that for all the things that we want and hold dear in our country, and the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and our freedom, this is such an essential part of that. And it's so funny that like the false bravado, the hubris that, hey, don't tell me thanks for my service, this and that. I thank everybody for their service, and I'm constantly that person that's walking around saying, you made a difference, and, giving up my seat to somebody on the airplane that deserved it more than I do, because I really do that. And what I've found is that the elements of your book are that way as well. You're very thankful for those people that gave you the opportunity to be where you are right now. And I think that's an amazing facet. John, were you always like that, or was that one of the things that the Marine Corps beat into you?
I don't think so.
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
I started, as a young guy, I think I was pretty cocky.
Yeah.
And as I joined I felt that I was well prepared to join the Marine Corps. And to be honest, I had been preparing for so long, I didn't think that boot camp was particularly challenging, which, is vastly, different story from a lot of people. And not that I was super fit. I had studied all of the, I had a recruiter that was just feeding me all of the information, the kind of outdoor skills, things like that, shooting, all of those things I knew. But I quickly had, like I said, I was kind of misplaced into a sniper platoon right as soon as I got to the infantry. And there I realized that I was, swimming with giant fish. And
Right.
the only way to not get eaten was going to be to, keep my head down, learn. And then I think I learned, a level of humility there. And I found over time, I mean, I'm just not that guy who's, if somebody thanks me for my service, I absolutely don't feel that you need to, but I'm certainly not going to be an asshole to you because you did it. I enjoyed, like I said, every day of the 21 years of active duty that I spent. There were moments that I didn't, there were things that sucked, but even those things, when you look back on them, you learn. I think the thing about paying the price that some people don't understand is that it's paid in installments, right? You don't have to pay it all at once. And an analogy I use a lot is mountain climbing. All right, and I'm not a huge mountain climber, but I've climbed a few. You get to Everest, all of the work to get between the base camps prepares you to get to the next base camp. So it's not you don't shoot up to the top all at once, right? You acclimatize at base camp 1, and then you start having to do some like more technical things as you move. So the work prepares you for the next level of work, and then leadership prepares you hopefully for the next level of leadership that you get assigned to.
Right.
So I don't, I think people that shy away from doing hard things because they say I can't do that, like, well, you can do something more than you're doing. And when you do that, that's going to give you the skills that you need to do something harder.
Yeah. Well, tell us about Tough Rugged Bastards. You got the book. What why did I mean, you wrote about this and a lot in there, but it's like, why did you choose to, or what kind of made you think like, hey, I should document some of this, or I want to get this story out there? How did you come up on, like, what was the decision to do that?
Yeah, it was kind of long and roundabout, like a lot of things. But after I retired from the Marine Corps, I had the GI Bill to use, and I was in no one would have taken me into college when I got out of high school. I didn't have the money, didn't have the grades, it wasn't going to happen. But I finally started seeing the light towards the end of my career and started using the tuition assistance program, and was able to finish a bachelor's degree just before I retired. And then I still had all of this, GI Bill left. So I was able to get, I loved reading, loved learning. So I'm like, hey, let me get a master's degree in literature, or it was in kind of liberal arts, but focused in literature. And I finished that. And, in that process, I had to write a lot. And one of the professors was like, hey, we have this at the University of North Carolina in Wilmington, where I live, one of the best writing programs in the nation. Master of Fine Arts writing programs. So I'm like, well, it's very competitive. They only pick like, a dozen people a year. And I was like, well, there's no way I'll get in, but if it'll make you happy, I'll submit something. And somehow, they must have had like a quota for military guys or whatever, but I got in. And I realized when I was going through that program that anything that I wrote that was nonfiction was going to have to be reviewed by the DOD. And I wasn't, as the graduation requirement, your thesis essentially was a finished book. So I was like, well, I can't write about my time in the military because so I wrote a novel that was nothing about the military and frankly not terribly good. But when I finished that, I had at least learned the kind of the bones of writing, what writing was about. And I wound up running into a lady that was writing a history of the Marine Raiders in World War II. And she had asked me for some help with that. And then she asked me, she's like, hey, send me something that you've written. And I sent a essay about, that's included in the book, or portions of it are about being a sniper in Najaf, Iraq. And she read it. She sent it to her agent, and her agent got a hold of me and said, hey, can I represent you? Let's turn this into a book. And I'd really not thought of it kind of until that point. And I'm like, well, sure, why not? Let's give it a go. And so when I did it, I wanted to, one, definitely talk about the everything that the Marines at Detachment 1 did and document the history of it. I think another thing I think a lot of the books that are written by, the GWAT books were either written, kind of too soon after the fact. So, I mean, they're great histories, right? They're like, hey, this happened, this happened, this happened. I did this an awesome thing, and then this awesome thing. There's a lot of those. But at this point, when I went to write it or when I finished it, we were really like 20 years after the fact. So I think in writing, a memoir, which means in French, memory, right? You're writing with a level of reflection that kind of allows you to, probably have a little more humility, perhaps, than if you're writing it right after the fact. A little more, the ability to say, hey, now I'm telling you this, but and I do that a couple times. Like I don't know that I was this like thoughtful at the time, but
Yeah.
but not, this is what I'm thinking. I wanted to write something that I feel like another, not a flaw, just a difference with a lot of kind of GWAT books is that they are really seem to be focused at other military people. A lot of acronyms and kind of just things thrown at you. And I feel like I wanted to kind of give a civilian reader the kind of the understanding of all of this without like all of the kind of bravado or whatever. So I really was trying to, but I also wanted something that would have some kind of learning points for, military people if they did read it. So I went into it with a lot of, kind of wickets I was trying to hit and feel like I was able to kind of get them all in a way that was not too terribly disjointed.
Yeah. So you're you're kind of going back and reflecting on this, right, as you're writing it, and then you're putting this out there. You looking back on this, like, is there something that you said, man, I wish I could have changed this, or I wish this was like a little bit different, or had handled this differently? Like, I'm just curious if like, you go back to that reflect, because there's always going to be something where you wish you did something better or whatever, but like that you can really go, man, like, I wish I had known this when I was starting this unit, or I wish I had known this then.
I don't. I mean, it wound up being so very successful, due to the work of so many people that I don't. I mean, there's one thing, and I didn't even put this in a book. I'd kind of forgotten about it, but I had gotten into a habit of every time we would hit a target, if that building or that house or whatever had a vehicle in it, we would confiscate the vehicle. And so we had this collection of vehicles that were we would use for reconnaissance and things like that, civilian vehicles. We one of the midway through our deployment, if we couldn't find the keys to the vehicle or whatever the case was, then we would usually disable it. And we had been told that, hey, you don't necessarily have to disable these vehicles. But we did hit this house, and there was a car in a carport, and on the way out, I'm like, screw this, and threw a thermite grenade on the engine block. And a thermite grenade is just a super hot flame that will not extinguish, right? And it'll go through, it'll melt components within
will go up
the
in
engine
flames
block.
in seconds, basically, with a thermite
Yeah.
in there. Yeah.
And it somehow kind of shot through and got the interior on fire, and before we could even leave, this whole palm tree underneath the vehicle, it caught ablaze the whole house, and I think I burned half a block down of downtown Iraq. So that was something I kind of got a little talking to after. I like, yeah, need to be a little bit more prudent with my use of pyrotechnics. But no, I think, and maybe because I've learn that even when there are lessons to be learned, and like we kind of mentioned, I mean, you've got to be brutal in the after action process, and as a leader, you absolutely have to tell people that, hey, I expect you to don't go along with me if you disagree. It's you're going on this mission, your ass is on the line as well, you're a part of this, so you have a responsibility to point out if you think, and maybe I'll tell you to shut up and color, because that's what I need to do. But we all want the same thing. And if we're all, and we, like if we all know what that thing is, we know where we're going, where our destination is, then we all have equal, responsibility to help ourselves get there. So a lot of, times where I made, would have made a bad decision, I had people that would step up and say, hey, man, maybe we should think about this. And so we self-corrected a lot of times. And even in things where we probably could have done things differently or better, we learned a lot.
Yeah. So what do you and we're gonna have like the links to the book for everyone and push that out there. But like, what else do you have that you're working on now? I mean, you got the book out and you're promoting that, and it's telling the story, which is gonna be an incredible story. But like, what else are you doing now? Because I know you still work a little bit with military, but you do some private sector kind of stuff. So just curious, kind of how you've been able to take the skills and all the lessons learned and sort of you're applying it in a different domain, but some of the key core lessons are just they're the lessons that people need to learn. So what are
Yeah.
you doing with it now? Yeah.
Yeah. And that's, so I retired in 2008 and immediately kind of rolled in, the next Monday to the job that I still do now as the training and education branch director for the Marine Corps Raider Training Center. So in it, I'm, get the great opportunity to see, special operators go through training, the ones that are successful, the ones that aren't. And, I've, over the last couple of years after the book, really realized that one, I want to, at some point do something different. So I've started branching out into coaching, kind of higher performers and, doing leadership kind of talks and seminars and things of that nature. So I'm really, interested in increasing the level of that that I get to do. Because I think there's so many, valuable lessons from the military that a lot of things that we, I've found a lot of times things that we absolutely take for granted that are kind of mind-boggling when you share them with a corporate partner. So that's a big part of it. I think I came upon writing the book, the realization that, or more in research for the book, that is kind of, as Greg mentioned a little bit, there's so many kind of military influencers or, whatever you want to call them, that they're like, hey, I did all this awesome stuff. So come, follow me and I'll take you where you need to go. And that's really what the whole idea of Walking Point was about. That, if there's a little bit off the topic, but there's a guy, Joseph Campbell, who wrote a lot about the idea of the hero's journey, a book, the Hero with 1,000 Faces. And he talks about in the Arthurian Grail legend, right? When the knights were going after the Holy Grail, they were like, hey, I think it was Percival or whatever. It's like, hey, we each need to go, like, we're all going to go look for the Grail, but we all got to go our own separate ways. And we all have to go into the woods where it's the darkest. And if you find a trail, then you're in the wrong place, because, we need to go where there isn't a trail and make one. And that's really the idea that I'm trying to get people to understand, is that, if you're following somebody, you're not going to get to your own destination, right? You're going to get where they're going. So I've started another book that's going to be called probably Walking Point, a little bit more on lessons, not a memoir at all, but lessons that I've learned kind of leadership wise and life wise. And I think the more the older I've gotten and the more post, military life I've lived, I've realized that, most of those are the same. Those military lessons apply to life. And, if you can, it really all starts with figuring out where you're going and then just chipping away at getting there. There's this, idea that you have to get up at 4:00 every morning and take a cold plunge and then eat, whatever, and, drink mushroom coffee in order to be successful is crazy. Right. So, and there's no such thing as a quick fix. Right. There's, you've got to just do the work consistently, a little bit at a time. And, over time you'll get there, or you'll get close, but you'll get somewhere that nobody else has been. And that's really what it's all about, I think.
Yeah, that's amazing. And Brian and I are in discussions for our second book now, in the very preliminary discussions about it. And I've always said that when the book is released on tape, I wanted to have Gilbert Godfrey be my voice. The guy from Affleck. But sadly, he died, so now I'm not sure who I'm going to pick for that. But is the one thing I of many things that I love about what you're doing here is it's not about the platitudes. It's about the hard work, and it is hard work, and it's being consistent and showing up. My dad used to say, my dad, a former Marine, was the one that said, showing up is more than half the battle. It's almost all of the battle. And so who in that book, when you go to having somebody be your voice, who are you going to choose for your voice? Is it somebody really cool, or are you goofy like me and want to have somebody funny?
Well, I mean, it's already out on audio book, so I wanted to do it. Yeah. I thought that I would be good, but apparently I don't get that choice. So the publisher made the decision, and they picked an actor. He does a lot of military books. His name Tom Byer. I think if you see him, you would recognize him because he's been on CSI Miami and different shows. He does and I let my wife pick because I couldn't. They sent a bunch of audition tapes, and I got to pick, but I was out of the people they selected. But I'm like, I can't listen to this, not my voice, because I hear it, So my wife listens to a lot of audiobooks, so she picked him, and I've got a lot of reviews about how he did.
That's great.
But yeah, definitely the second book. I think I would like to do it. I think that seems cool.
Yeah, that's great. And you know what? When people listen to the audiobook, which is great, and your success is great, the idea is that when you say it, when you're the one telling the story, there's somehow much more weight to it, I feel, because you're hearing it from the, as Brian and I joked, the horse's mouth or the horse's ass, depending on what the story is. So
probably
like that.
Both, at different times.
Yeah, I love that. Brian, I'm just saying it's amazing that we've had this opportunity, John. I hold you in high regard, and I think anybody would be happy to dig in. And I'm anxiously looking forward to your writing on being the point man, being your own point man. That's awesome. Fascinating to me.
Cool. Well, I like it. We didn't get to talk about it, but the stuff you guys are doing, I've really enjoyed your videos, and I, could talk for another couple hours about that. I really think that one of the good fortunes of my life was starting off in a sniper platoon, and with the kind of the mandate that you're always under observation, so just Kim's games, were memory games, things like that, were we were always expected to be observant, and that is probably a skill that's helped me more than anything else in my life. So a lot of your stuff about just paying attention to the little things, your decisions that you make, are absolutely ways to prevent bad things from happening. So
we run in some of the similar circles. It'd be loved. I would love for us to be able to collaborate on something because I think what you do is fascinating, and clearly Brian and I are having a ball. So there's nothing better than knowing that you're pulling the veil from somebody's eyes and allowing them to see the world differently. And maybe if that's the cathartic nature of their restart, then we've done something. Yeah, I don't care about my name going anywhere, but my legacy, I'd like to be that at least one person one time in their life goes, wait a minute, we don't have to continue to stomp around in the grape bucket like Lucy and Ethel. We can go out and do something else in life.
Yeah, probably not too many people will know what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, I've heard that all the time.
I have to.
Brian's my filter for humans.
Yeah. I was like, Greg, you're using movie references that are before your time, let alone anyone else listening to this show. Like, no one's gonna get that. But no, John, I appreciate you coming on and talking to us, and putting this stuff out there. It's I always find it fascinating talking. The reason why I find some of the stuff interesting is just personally with your stories. One, obviously, everything talked about having to start a new unit, knowing about how the Marine Corps is. Like, there's all of these growing pains and things. And then, through all this and all your other experiences, you're coming out just going like, hey, here's the things you need to focus on, and anyone can do them, right? It's hard work. It sucks. Like, sorry, it's just doing. I mean, even that's what people don't even know. Like, especially with being a sniper and doing reconnaissance, it's like it's a really boring job. Like you're just sitting there watching something for a really long time. Like you just like it's not fun. It's not sexy. Like you're, just writing reports, sending stuff back, taking photos, watching like, and maybe you get like a second of action. And it's like, it's really monotonous and you got to be organized and you have to have attention to detail. But like those skills, like that's what it takes to do anything. And so it's always interesting. It's like, you can have all these careers, you can have all these experiences, and it still comes down to like, hey, there's just some basic elements here. If you get really good at those basic elements, like you'll figure the rest out, or you'll learn along the way. Like it's just, here's the things you can control. So I always appreciate it. Like you said, like I'm not doing the military influencer thing, where it's buy my whatever t-shirt or way of thinking. It's like, no, man, like you got to do you have to walk point in your own life, and here's some fundamentals that you can learn, and that'll help you navigate that tough job.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that. Well, John, do you have how else can people like follow you, get a hold of you, or contact you? Obviously, like I said, I'll have all the links and I'll share the stuff on social media when it comes out, but like, and especially to get your book. But what else is the best way to kind of follow along and learn more from
Yeah, the big one.
John Dailey?
So yeah, I write a couple of weekly newsletters that go out. One is called Walking Point, and that's really the stuff I've been talking about. And the other is called RTFU, or Ruck the F Up, is really just about rucking for fitness and how you build mental toughness through that. I have a website. It's jadailey.com, Dailey. And there are links to both of those. There's the book. You can get all of those things on there. I probably need to update it, but it's all there. Social media wise, LinkedIn, some, Instagram, some, but I really am trying to spend less of my time on there. I've started, making little videos kind of inspired by y'all, just short. Hey, here's a little something to think about. Usually my Sunday morning out on a hike videos, but yeah, the website is the best place to kind of one-stop shop.
Yeah, I love it too. I always tell people too, is like you want to just go throw a rock on and go for a walk and be alone with your thoughts. Like it's the best. It's so good for you in so many different ways. And when you have to do it a lot, like you learn like this really sucks. Like when you're doing a long hike or something. But it's one of those things where it clears your head. You
Yeah,
get to think
well, you
things
definitely
through.
learn to compartmentalize. Right?
Yeah.
Hey, I'm in a lot of pain right now, but that's I need to put that aside.
Yeah.
Or I don't at some points, and most for fitness, you're probably not going to go to the point where you're like, hey, I don't think I can take another step, but I'm going to take one more. And if I did that one, then I can do one more. And then, if I could do that, I could take 10. And if you get to the point where you can pretty much do anything, right? So that's why I certainly not something I loved when I was on active duty, but it's something that, I did a lot. And it's certainly something that I've come to realize Go Ruck, the company. There's just a lot of people interested in it now, and I think even with that, there's a lot of kind of influencers. You got to do this. You got to carry this much. You got to spend $500 on this or that. I mean, just get your school backpack. Throw a couple of books in it and go for a walk. When that gets easy, throw in some more, and when that gets easy, go a little further. And then that's how it's the same thing with weightlifting, the principle of progressive resistance, right? You do something until it becomes easy, and then, make it harder. And then eventually that harder thing will become easy too. And the big thing, I think that I said it already, but the hard thing that you do is preparing you for the next hard thing. As long as you keep that in mind, and the harder the thing is, the kind of the better the victory of getting through is going to be.
Yeah, and it's it's funny too, even when you get into how the brain is wired for some of this stuff, and like it's not even you start to get that feeling of accomplishment or success or whatever it is, like finishing the hike or whatever, but you actually your brain starts that process when you start working towards it. Like it's like it doesn't just get like the dopamine from the accomplishment of winning. It actually creates this whole pathway of when I do this thing, you know, I start to feel a little bit, I start to get a little bit of that dopamine, and then I go for that reward. So it's like you simply just setting those habits and starting them. Yeah, it's like your brain is
just, I mean,
wired
being
for
the
that.
person, realizing that, hey, I'm the person that gets up at whatever time, 5 in the morning, and goes for a run or a ruck. One, you start to identify as that.
Yeah.
You're like, hey, I'm no longer somebody that hates rolling out of bed. You're like, I'm a person that does this thing. I'm a weightlifter, I'm a rucker, I'm a non-smoker, I'm a somebody that doesn't stuff my face full of cookies. Whatever it is that you,
Right.
the biggest thing. There's a lot of great research about that, goal setting and identity goals versus process goals and outcome goals. And but James Clear, Atomic Habits is probably one of the better books about that. But starting to identify yourself differently is I think the first step. And the first step in that is figuring out where you're going. When I finish this journey,
Again,
I'm going to be
right.
a fit 80-year-old.
Yeah.
So I need to start thinking of myself as a fit 50-year-old to get there.
Yeah. No, that's great, John. We appreciate you coming on, man, and sharing the stories. And there's countless others. And then of course you got some of the characters in there. Colonel Coates is his own character, so of course he gave you the title. I mean,
Indeed.
he was the one. I can't remember who was telling me about it when he was working for Coates, and like they sent him to a couple of the guys to Ranger School because it was all about Ranger School. And they brought him in the morning, like before he left, and he was like, Ranger tab or body bag when you come home. You either
That
come
was
home, and I was like, oh, they were like, what? Well, they were already like same thing, like E6s, E7s, right? And so they go
yeah.
down to Ranger School, and actually the Ranger instructors were like, did you guys get in trouble or something? Like, what are you doing here? And like they're like, yeah, like they'd already been at Force Recon for a while. They were already like doing whatever. They're like, yeah, we had a colonel who's got a thing for this school, so here we
Yeah,
are.
that was if you were going to be a team leader or a platoon sergeant, you had to have gone. And I was lucky that I had gone before I got there. I went as a relatively young sergeant from the infantry, from a sniper platoon. So
Okay.
it was one of the things that I think kind of endeared me to him. He was like, hey, this guy, went to Ranger School back, uh, long ago. But yeah, luckily I went as a young guy and not
Yeah.
like some of the guys he would send.
Yeah.
Amen.
Well, we appreciate it, man. I'll have all the links for everyone. If you're listening, check out Tough Rugged Bastards and follow John. He's always putting out good stuff, and we appreciate you for coming on here, man. Thank you so much. And yeah, we just thanks for sharing that and sharing the story. It's a cool piece of history too that you're a part of.
Awesome. Well, yeah, thanks for having me. I'd be happy to come back anytime.
Oh,
Yeah.
we got so much more we could talk about. I agree, John. I think that
Yeah.
would be great, Brian.
Awesome.
Thanks everyone for tuning in. If you enjoy it, please share it with a friend, and don't forget that training changes behavior. Oop, all right, man. We got the end there. Sorry.